In this lecture, we'll configure Kafka Producer and Consumer for JSON serializer and deserializer. In previous couple of lectures, we have used message of type string format for the communication, right? So Kafka Producer will basically produce the message of type string and it will write to the Kafka topic, and then Kafka Consumer will consume that string message from the Kafka topic. Well, sometime we may have a requirement to write a Java object as a JSON to the Kafka topic, and consumer will consume that JSON and then convert it into Java object, right? Well, in next upcoming lectures we will see how to send and receive Java object as a JSON byte array to and from Apache Kafka. Well, Apache Kafka stores and transports byte array. There are a number of built-in serializers and deserializers, but it does not include any for JSON. Therefore, Spring Kafka created a JSON serializer and JSON deserializer, which we can use to convert Java objects to and from a JSON. Well, Spring Kafka, it provides a JSON serializer and JSON deserializer. So we can use these two classes to convert Java object into JSON and JSON into Java object. We will send a Java object as a JSON byte array to Kafka topic using JSON serializer. Afterward, we will configure how to receive a JSON byte array and automatically convert it into Java object using JSON deserializer. Well, let's head over to the IntelliJ IDEA and let's change application.properties file to configure JSON serializer and deserializer for Kafka Producer and Consumer. Well, let me go to the IntelliJ IDEA. Let's go to application.properties file over here. So here you can see we have used string deserializer and string serializer classes to serialize and deserialize message key, right? So we are going to keep string deserializer and string serializer classes from Kafka library for this message key. We are not going to change the deserializer and serializer classes for this key. We are going to only change the message value. Okay, so here you can see right now we have string deserializer class from Kafka library to deserialize a value for this consumer. So let's go ahead and let's change it. So let's use JSON deserializer from Spring Kafka library. So let me comment it out this, and here I'm going to type the property spring.kafka.consumer.value-d and then the value is org.springframework.kafka.support.serializer.json deserializer. Okay, now we are using JSON deserializer class from Spring provided library, not from Kafka library. Okay, so this JSON deserializer is basically created by Spring Kafka library, not from Kafka library. Okay, now we have configured JSON deserializer for this Kafka consumer. So Kafka consumer will basically convert JSON byte array into Java object by using this JSON deserializer. Now let's go ahead and let's see how to configure JSON serializer class for this Kafka Producer. So right now we are using string serializer class to serialize the value from the Kafka library, right? So let me simply comment it out this, and let me write the property spring.kafka.producer.value-serializer and then type the value org.springframework.kafka.support.serializer and then JSON serializer. Okay, it means that this Kafka Producer will basically convert Java object into JSON and then it will write to the Kafka topic. Alright, now we have configured Kafka Consumer and Kafka Producer for JSON deserializer and JSON serializer. Alright, great. Well, in a Kafka Consumer we can also configure one more property, that is spring.kafka.consumer.properties.spring.json.trusted.package is equal to star. It means that Kafka consumer can deserialize all the classes from this package. Now we have configured Kafka consumer and producer for JSON deserializer and JSON serializer. Alright. In next lecture, we'll create a simple POJO class that we can write to the Kafka topic. Alright, I will see you in the next lecture. Hi, welcome back. In this lecture, we'll create a simple POJO class, that is user class, to serialize and deserialize. Well, basically we are going to create a user class and we'll send and receive user object to and from a Kafka topic. And we are going to use Spring Kafka provided JSON serializer and JSON deserializer classes to convert JSON into Java object into JSON. Alright, let's head over to the IntelliJ IDEA and let's create a simple user class. Well, let me create a new package over here and let me call it as payload, or you can give any package name that you want, something like model or beans or DTO. So I'm going to use payload here, and within this package we are going to create a class. Let's call it as user, and let's go ahead and let's define few instance variables, something like private int id and then private string first name, alright, and then private string last name, and then let's go ahead and let's create a getter setter methods to access these private fields. So right click, generate, and then choose getter setter methods, and then choose all these instance variables and then click on OK. So this will create a getter setter methods to access the private instance variables. And let's go and let's also create a toString method. Perfect. Now we have created a simple POJO class, that is user class, for serialize and deserialize. In next lecture, we'll create a Kafka producer to produce JSON message. Alright, I will see you in the next lecture.